Good morning and welcome to Life in the Markets with the Life Financial Group. My name is Tim Russell, the President Wealth Manager here at Life Financial Group. Today is May 5th, 2025, Cinco de Mayo. So happy Cinco de Mayo to you. I've got a couple updates I wanted to give you about the markets. Now, there were two pretty important things that happened in the calendar last week. First of all, we had a week worth of market activity, and this actually was something like 9 straight days of positive returns in the S&P 500, which is the first time since I believe it was 2022 that we had that many successive positive days in a row. So that's obviously good news, but maybe even more significantly is we had the end of a month last week. Now, if you know anything, if you paid attention at all last month, you know that it was a wild month. We started out with moderate expectations about tariffs, a lot of uncertainty about it. And then on the 3rd, April 3rd, Donald Trump gave his Liberation Day speech where he talked about the tariffs. He talked about how he's going to play hardball with the world, essentially. And everyone saw the stock markets implode. We had some really insane volatility this month. Now, since its lows, get this, the stock market, based on the S&P 500, the S&P 500 has recovered nearly 18% from its lows. Can you imagine that? In fact, if you look from the beginning of April to the last day of April, we had significant volatility. But the market ended up basically flat for the month. Again, would you have imagined that on the 4th as we were dealing with these Liberation Day market jitters? I sure didn't. That just goes to a bigger lesson and a broader point that I think is worth considering at this point. News, market volatility, they're always scary. But remember this. News-driven market events, just like what we had last month, news-driven market events are often, they resolve in the direction of the primary trend prior to the news. That's my observation as I look at what the market does. We had a massive news shock. The market dropped down, and then within a couple weeks, we saw the market recover, and now we're back above those prior highs. So I'm not predicting the future. I'm not telling you that, hey, we don't have to worry about tariffs anymore. I'm not saying that we don't have to be concerned about other news-driven things that may cause people to be afraid. But I do want you just to take a minute, take a breath. God's in control. He's got this. And you don't have to worry about all of these things. If you're feeling particularly nervous and afraid about the markets, I think this would be a really good time for you to just step back and disconnect from the news, disconnect from all of the sources of fear. Let the market work itself out. There's nothing that your worrying can do to change what the markets are going to do. In fact, had you responded by changing your investment strategy, pulling money out of the markets in the midst of that significant downturn, you would have missed the rally. You would have missed the recovery. So while I can't promise you what the future is going to be like, I can say with a fair degree of certainty that we can, with the appropriate amount of patience, sit tight during market downturns and expect for there to be some amount of recovery. Not because we're trusting in me or the markets, but ultimately because we trust in God. All right, so what can we expect in the weeks ahead or in this week ahead? There's obviously, we're in the middle of earnings season, so there's more earnings that can come out. There's a lot of soft data points that we're going to be getting over the next several days that are going to help indicate the strength of the economy. Many people are looking at the economy and they want to know what's going to happen with the recession. Are we going into a recession or not? And I'm not going to call it. I can't tell you whether we're having a recession or not. Frankly, that's irrelevant to most of our investors, most of our clients. What I can tell you is that we're going to get more data and there will become a little bit more clarity as to how strong or weak our economy is, and also recognize that the data is lagging. So the market and the economy is where it is right now. The data that we'll get will simply tell us where the economy was maybe a few weeks or a month or two ago. So just be aware of that as we just give time for this process to work out. So just a few things that I think might be helpful for us moving forward. This is a new weekly podcast, video podcast that we're doing and sending out to our clients. Obviously, you can get it on audio, you can get it on YouTube. I'd encourage you to subscribe so you get more information and are able to see these videos in a more timely manner. I would also say that we're trying to not just talk about the news, we're trying to give you investing concepts, talk about biblical stewardship, and remind you to trust in the Lord through all of these things. So with that, let me just close with a verse for us. The verse of today comes from 1 Timothy 6 through 10. Let me read it for you. Actually, just read a little excerpt of this passage. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And there's a lot in that passage that we didn't talk about. Actually, I've got a whole chapter on this whole passage in my book, The Good Steward, so go take a look at that. But I just want to point out, godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness is not a means to gain. We don't worship God. We don't trust God because He makes us wealthy, healthy, and wise. We trust Him because He's good and holy and righteous and fully worthy of our praise. So trust Him. Be content with what He's provided you, and don't love money. Don't make it your single life pursuit. Make growing in your relationship with God, worshiping Him, make that your pursuit. And I think all other things are going to work itself out. As we wrap up, I just want to remind you, there are a few things that are coming up in the calendar in the life of this company. First of all, we have our first ever client jog, a journey of generosity. An email went out about that. This is a live in-person small group where we get to go through generosity and learn about the story that God is inviting us to participate in. We're not talking about techniques. We're not talking about strategies. We're not talking about where you should give. So I would encourage you, if you've gotten an email about that, respond, and I encourage you to come and join us here live in person in Douglasville. And if not, reach out to us and we'll be happy to get you that information. And we do have Roy's retirement party coming up next month, the 11th of June. So if you're able to, I'd love to have you stop by and visit with Roy and share some good times and good memories. I know it will be an encouragement to him. Thank you so much for joining us today on our first episode of Life in the Markets with the Life Financial Group. My name is Tim Russell. Thank you for joining. Subscribe, share this podcast and this video with other individuals, and give us a rating and review as it's incredibly helpful. Until next time, take care. God bless. Be safe in the markets.
The topics discussed in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations. Investing and investment strategies involve risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Securities and advisory services are offered through Genius Wealth Management, member FINRA and SIPC.